Welcome, everyone. Joining me today is Winslow Martin, a photojournalist from the US who first came to Armenia in 1999, and he's been looking for excuses to come back ever since. Right now, he's kicking off his photo exhibition at the History Museum of Armenia in Republic Square entitled To My Armenia. Thank you, Winslow, for joining us today.
You're welcome. Great to be here. Thank you.
So my first question, the exhibition consists of about 147 photos.
It's a lot of pictures.
And it spans over 24 years of traveling to Armenia. So how do you go through that selection process of picking which ones to actually exhibit?
Well, it's an excellent question because people think pictures happen in 125th second, which they do. But when you're editing an archive that large over such a large period of time, the first thing I did was organize them into categories on a timeline. So that helped. But it's a daunting process. I had help. And ultimately, it's a feel. There's certain pictures that are obviously making it and others that just add to the story.
And is there like any kind of theme or specific storyline that you're trying to follow in this particular?
Yes, there is. And I've done other presentations and I literally break it into chapters. And I see the exhibit as more of a journey than just an exhibition because there's text that it's accompanying. So each chapter has a story. And while they're all connected to my growing love and attachment to Armenia and historical events, breaking them into chapters, you could almost say it's like a piece of music or like a book almost. Pictures happen to be the means of communication.
And the title of the exhibition is called To My Armenia.
Right.
So if you want to maybe delve into
Titles are always hard to find, particularly because My Armenia is already a branded name. But To My Armenia in English, and it turns out not in Armenian, simply means two things. It means traveling to Armenia, but it also means I'm giving to my Armenia. So in another stage performance I had, a photo theater, I called it We Wait for Your Return, a love letter to Armenia. So it has both meanings for me.
Great.
Oh, just one more thing. I never claim it's any other thing than my Armenia, both mine and my heart and what I've seen.
Which brings me to my next question, which is like, what first drew you to document Armenia and Armenians? What is your perspective as an outsider and how has that affected?
Well, it's a big question and I'll try to answer it simply. Just logistically, long story, but I ended up photographing a very charismatic Armenian-American church in Watertown. I came here with him first time, the story was done. He came back again for the election of the new Catholicos and I just decided to come with him. Impractical, no plan, no assignment. Again, long story, and it's really the journey of the show. I kept coming back, I kept coming back. And as I kept coming back, I met people who introduced me to people, who took me to their villages, who took me to their parents' homes. And in that journey, I experienced the unbelievable level of welcoming, of friendliness, of acts of kindness. So, to the last part of your question, which maybe I forget.
Outside perspective and how has it affected, let's say, your photography?
I think the word you used is outsider, and it's an excellent word because in my photojournalism and my commercial work, I am an outsider trying to create something. The big answer, the simplest answer is I became an insider. So it really changed my life and my photography, both aesthetically and personally.
I've actually selected three different photos.
Boy, that's a tough one.
Yeah, and basically I would love if you could maybe share with us the story that was behind those photos. So the first one.
Yeah, the first one comes from October 27, 1999. That was the second time I came to Armenia, and I was really here to photograph the inside church world at Echmiadzin. And I had unlimited access to the election process. It's in the pictures. But literally while they were electing the new Catholicos in the church, which was locked, the tragic events at the parliament happened. And again, lots to say about that, and I document it in pictures. The next morning, didn't know Yerevan basically at all, went immediately to Bagramian, photographed what was going on, and this gentleman was one of many people who were there, who were arguing and screaming with each other. There were onlookers, and while I was there, they actually released the hostages. So that image, in some ways, just generically shows the grandfather, the intensity of the life here, but it was a political event of incredible concern because people thought it was maybe even a coup. And so that was that moment.
Wow. And in the second one, it's a very different, it's a very different.
It's a very different picture. It's a very different slice of Armenia and a very different slice of my experience here. By that time, in 2000, no, that was in 2003. So by that time, I'd come back many times with no agenda. But as I said, I became parts of families, literally. In fact, in this village, Chikolovka on Sevan, I have a goddaughter. So the picture is of my very good friend Naira and one of the farmers. I just went out in the field. And the picture reminds me of those two individuals, lots of stories there, but really my relationship with that village. It is a home for me. As I said in my photo theater, once you come for a meal, you're a guest, and once you spend the night, you are literally part of the family. And flash forward to 2 weeks ago, my family came here for the first time. And when I first went there, my son hadn't been born yet, and now he's 21. The mother, she called him baby and embraced him. And, I was almost waiting for her to want to marry one of the villagers because that's the way it goes here sometimes. So that relationship is so deep that it's really now one of the big reasons I could keep coming back, because it's not just an obligation I feel. It's like I visit my sister in Pennsylvania and my brother-in-law in Colorado. So that picture for me isn't just about the village, but there's a sweetness in the human relationship. And if you get that in a picture, you're like, score.
Just representing family, basically.
Yeah, basically, yeah.
And in the third photo, life has its ups and downs, some happiness, some sadness, and that seems to portray a lot of sadness. Well,
this is beyond sadness. This is profound tragedy. I came here for COVID to photograph landscape and nature on September 17th, 2020, the second the border opened. And within 10 days, the war started. And this really almost genocidal act of aggression happened against Armenia. And I've been planning to go home in a couple of weeks, but I stayed. And I decided not to go to the war zone because I knew the war was everywhere. So what do? Yes, I worked for a website, but I had to do my own research. I was attached to no organization. I got a Ministry of Foreign Affairs badge. And I heard that, if people remember, the soldier that was in all the promotion around Yerevan with the exploding cannon, he was killed early in the war. And I went to Yereblur. I heard there were no journalists, there was nobody. CNN hadn't broken through, Los Angeles Times hadn't broken through, and they wouldn't let me photograph. But I noticed the growing number of holes in the ground and the flowers. I was like, this landscape has been transformed in 1 week. They let me come back and photograph the flowers. Over time, I started going back a lot, but this was 1 week after the war. I'd already photographed volunteers all over. The coming together of people was really the first very, very profound thing. So I started photographing. This guy was reluctant, but my way and my guide, you could say, explaining what I do, respect comes immediately because I'm not just an outsider. So I photographed him. So this photo has a metaphorical aspect to me about the war and the condition, and the fact that he was a volunteer, number one, blew me away. And just to put it simply, I'm not one to really interpret pictures, but lifting one stone out of a hole in the ground, out of volunteerism, out of some love that I can't even imagine, and just trying, not knowing the outcome of the war then, there was something symbolic. And as I wrote to you, when I wrote about a few of the pictures, by the end of the war, when I came many times, nobody was a volunteer. And people were dressed in black. And it was either a neighbor or a father or a son or somebody you worked with. So the whole country, not just new people, but because of this familial way here, of this small country with a big heart, as they say, everybody wasn't just touched. They were shattered, and the threat didn't go away, and still hasn't.
Yeah, it leaves goosebumps.
Yeah.
I guess with all of these valuable stories that you've collected, And this is the first time, from what I understood, that you're actually having an exhibition for these photos, right?
It's the first time I've had an exhibition of this scale, and I knew immediately that I wanted to do it in Armenia first, because it is my gift, because I have been told thank you by farmers that are giving me, won't let me leave without dried up eggplant in a difficult season, and I'm taking photographs from them. So I owe so much. And I've come to the point where I believe this isn't about photography, this is about communication. And as I say in the show, I want even Armenians to be amazed by what they're just used to.
And is there any long-term goal to maybe share these stories outside of Armenia with people?
Absolutely, and it will happen, and I have already, because I've developed a photo theater which combines my storytelling, large pictures on a screen, and both original and traditional music composed and rearranged by a young Armenian composer. I did that at Northeastern University, plan to bring it here. So though I'm aging in years, I'm very happy to have this passion which brings me forward for educational reasons, for artistic reasons, and for people to know more about Armenia, and at least for people to stop saying to me sometimes, when are you going back to Albania?
Thank you again for speaking with us today. And for those of you watching at home, if you're interested in visiting Winslow's exhibition at the History Museum of Armenia, the exhibition will be there until September 3rd. Thank you for watching CivilNet.